Hello and welcome to Business Point on Global Television, where we x-ray Nigeria's economy, talk about government policies, as well as tech and innovation. I am Queen Agaba. Today, we look at the controversy surrounding petrol pricing between two major players in the nation's oil industry, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Nnpcl, and the Dangote Refinery. As petrol prices continue to fluctuate, consumers are left wondering what lies ahead for affordability and accessibility. This ongoing debate raises important questions about competition, government regulation, and the future of local refineries. We'll be exploring these factors, the factors particularly driving the controversy, the potential impact on everyday Nigerians, and what steps could be taken to resolve this tension. With my guest on the program, Dr. Wisdom Enang, who is a senior energy analyst, just after this break. Please stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us, where we x-ray Nigeria's economy. We talk about tech innovation as well as government policies, and we are talking about petrol prices, particularly as it continues to fluctuate, leaving consumers left wondering what lies ahead for affordability and accessibility, as this ongoing debate has raised lots of important questions about competition, government regulation, and the future of local refining. My guest on the program joining me to explore the factors driving this controversy, the potential impact on everyday Nigerians, and what steps we can take to resolve this tension is Dr. Wisdom Enang, who is a senior energy analyst. Good morning, Dr. Wisdom.
Hi, good morning, Queen. Thank you very much for having me.
Can you hear me? Good morning, Dr. Wisdom.
Loud and clear, I can hear you. Good morning, Queen.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Let's look at the factors Nigerians should blame for the back and forth between the Nnpcl and Dangote Refinery. What are these factors?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
You said. Okay. Right. So you were asking for the factors that are to blame for the hardship that Nigerians are experiencing with regards to the fuel.
Absolutely.
Okay. Excellent. Basically, when it comes to the fuel situation, I think the primary and the most commonsensical factor to blame is the fact that we do not really have domestic production as much as we should. And that is really an opportunity that we miss to develop right at the beginning of our petroleum sector. I mean, these are not developments that you do at the tail end or through the maturation stage of your sector. This is something you start right at the beginning. And this was an opportunity we missed. But what was the answer we gave? It was importation, importation. And then we've come to this point where, because of the over-reliance on the FX for importation, our exchange rate has gone down. Now, let me put things in context. If you look at the recent pricing structure for the Dangote refinery fuel by the Nnpc, a number of things jump out. There was the exchange between the Nnpcl and the Dangote refinery about pricing. Nnpcl said it was 898 naira, and the Dangote refinery refuted and said it wasn't sold in naira, it was sold in dollars. Now, if you take that number and then you do a sensitivity analysis and try different exchange rates, try 1,000, try 1,3, try 1,5, and try 1,6, you'll find out that there is a huge variance, in terms of pricing to the final consumer, depending on your exchange rate. So it is fair to say that the exchange rate, which I was trying to explain earlier, how we got to that sort of point, is responsible for about 20 to 25% of the pricing that we finally pay. Now, the other thing is the feedstock. You did hear in the Dangote discussion or the press release that the feedstock that is being sold for September is the one they imported from the WTI variant in the US. And what that means is that, they charge it in dollars because they have, procured the feedstock in dollars. And then we now have the pricing that we currently have. Now, a number of things burst through my head, because at this current point in time, the pricing template represents that there is no subsidy. But the question is this: there is no subsidy, but on what conditionality? The conditionality for no subsidy is, one, that the exchange rate doesn't depreciate further, otherwise we'll start paying subsidy to keep it at that price. Two, that the crude oil price feedstock doesn't get higher, otherwise there'll be subsidies that have to be paid. If not, we'll keep reviewing prices. The next thing is, what is the pricing mechanism for the crude for naira swap? Because what we do know at the moment is that the press release for the Dangote refinery talks, and even the Nnpcl talks about the fact that the current pricing is to govern the September 2024 supply for petroleum products, which was largely gotten from an imported variant of WTI. What then happens when we begin to have the naira, crude for naira? How is that going to change the landscape? Now, my guess is that it should make pricing cheaper, because obviously you have removed the component of pricing that has to do with logistics, the component of pricing for the crude that has to do with the insurance cost of bringing in the products. Now, that should reduce. But then again, that is contingent on the Nnpcl meeting the 385,000 barrels per day that it is earmarking to the Dangote refinery, for the crude for naira swap. Now, the question is, how are we working out the pricing mechanism for when there are months where the Nnpcl cannot meet that quota? That's the first question. The second question is, the Dangote refinery alluded in its write-up that the release that is sent out, that Nigerians should look forward to the pricing guide from the Presidential Committee for Fuel Distribution. So the question is, who are we looking at for long-term pricing guide? Is it the Nnpcl, or is it the Petroleum Committee, with the Presidential Petroleum Committee for Fuel Distribution? These are more other questions that we got to be asking. Well, if you're asking me what I'm hoping for, if the naira for crude for naira deal comes in the way I think it should come in, we should have a downward review in pricing.
But it appears that importation of fuel is not stopping anytime soon. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not stopping anytime soon, and it's roughly the mathematics is very clear and straightforward. The last data we have shows that we consume roughly about 50 million liters of PMS in a single day. On average, of course, that varies depending on the season. That varies also depending on the perhaps the availability of electricity. But then, sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Hello? Okay. But then, you also have the fact that the Dangote refinery is coming in at about 25 million liters. And so we need to import to make out the differential amount. And it is interesting to see how those costs compare. The Nnpcl say they're going to import to make up the variance that the Dangote refinery cannot supply. And we also know that the landing cost is 1,200. So does that mean that we're going to be subsidizing the imported, the quota that has been imported, and then selling the other one from the Dangote refinery almost without subsidy to the Nigerian public? It is interesting to see how that is going to be, how those are going to be moderated to make sure that we don't have an upward, as kind of an incessant upward price review.
Okay. Now we've had issues with Dangote Refinery and then Nnpcl, the major oil marketers, knowing that the Nnpcl wants to buy directly from Dangote Refinery and distribute, to the major oil marketers. How, how does this particularly affect the availability and affordability of petrol in the short and even long term?
Thank you very much. From an availability perspective, it means that fuel will be much more available because think about it, the Ipman have about 60 to 70% of the petrol stations in the country. And so that means that we'll have it a lot quicker, the middleman syndrome will be cut out. But from a pricing perspective, I'm a little bit worried because this is a seller's market. If you allow the idea of, off-takers going directly to the Dangote, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. What will happen is this. Those guys are going to go out with their offers to the Dangote refinery. And for them to have a preferential attention from the Dangote refinery, they would have to be bidding a better rate. So one person could say, I'm going to supply to the South-South where we need XYZ quota, and I'm going to be bidding for 1,000, maybe 20 naira. Another one could say, I'm going to be supplied to the Southwest. I want to bid it at 1,040 naira. And what you find is that because the objective function is being designed that the Dangote refinery would almost consider certainly the people with the higher bids, there's a higher tendency that the people with the higher bids will be considered. And what that means is that the pricing effect will be passed on to ordinary Nigerians. That's what the implication is. But, what the Nnpcl has done is to bridge the gap to say, we don't want it to lean towards monopoly, we'll rather lean towards monopsony, where we buy a bulk of the products, and then we can, in turn, have a higher negotiating power with the hindsight of the importation pricing, and then we can sell to other people. Now, if you're asking if these guys buy directly, if it's going to help with supply, the answer is yes. Is it going to be detrimental to pricing? The answer is yes, because it's going to mean that they will have to bid for higher prices to have the preferential attention. And if they do that, those higher prices will only be passed to consumers. And that will be the implication. Does it mean that, are they going to be at the risk of a business loss? Yes. Because if the NNPC says, well, we're going to off-take and we're going to sell at, say, maybe 950, and they are off-taking as well and selling at 1,200 to make their profits, then if there's enough supply from the NNPCL to be able to push in the market effect, then they won't have much of a market to deal with. They'll probably be able to sell in the outskirts, places like Benue and the other places that are a bit far from supply, and so fuel sells at about 1,213. But when it comes to Lagos, they might not have a market. So yes, it would help supply, but it would be detrimental to pricing.
Absolutely. But from what we see and what we know today, do you think there's any hope for any of our 4 refineries at this point in time? Or is it still a valid conversation that will be discussing the cabal factors at this point and under these circumstances?
I think one, I don't have hope for uh, the other two refineries, the Warri and the Kaduna refineries. The reason is there have been discussions around the concessioning of those refineries. So I don't have hope, at least not under the government's running. And of course, if the new people that take over run it, perhaps the way they want to run it, then of course they can sell whatever they want to sell. They might even choose to promote the sale of diesel and not really PMS. So I don't really have hope from that. But when you talk about the Port Harcourt refinery, I was reading something yesterday that they have started up some of the converters and they are having one issue come up after the other. There wasn't a very clear statement as to what the issue was, but the lack of clarity and the obscurity gives me very less confidence. And more so, the volume ratio between that refinery and Nigeria's consumption only tells me that at best, the Port Harcourt refinery will be able to stabilize the regional market from the south-south from a pricing and supply perspective, but it would have very little effect in the Nigerian context. However, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how we can get out of that point and how we can even bring in the supply, because of course, the many are the merrier. No matter whether it is solving a regional problem or a centralized problem for petroleum supply, product supply, we need to solve the problem. And more so, we need to create an incentive for other domestic refineries to start up and then, of course, get us to a point where we can have energy sufficiency.
Interesting. Dr. Enang, we'll have to take a quick break now, and when we return, we'll wrap up this conversation, and hopefully we get to discuss this some other time and you grant us audience on our platform. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. We have been speaking with Dr. Wisdom Enang, who is a senior energy expert on the controversy between Dangote Refinery and the Nnpcl. Dr. Wisdom, time would not permit us, to really delve further into this conversation, but let's look at how this pricing issue can or even affects Nigeria's international standing as an oil producer and exporter, especially as Dangote Refinery aims to supply, the domestic market.
Yes, I mean, it's one of the positive about the Dangote refinery coming up on board to supply the domestic market is that we're going to drop our appetite for imported, at least for the most part, importation. And importing fuel had been a contributor to to a degree of about 40% of our FX. So that means right now you can see our FX is increasing. Already in the last 1 year, it's increased about 10%. So that's a good thing. And that means we have a much better defensive power to be able to defend, the currency. But sustainability is really key. Any results that you would love to achieve from any policy needs to be sustained. It is the long-term effect of those results that we can then look at and say, yes, we're able to achieve it. Another thing is the government needs to do a lot to provide alternatives. Look, energy stands on three key principles: affordability, accessibility, and availability. When the affordability is actually in question, we need to get more alternatives. So we need to roll out renewable energy sources. We also need to look at CNG options and roll it out in a way that allows the average Nigerian to key in and be a part of it. For example, we need to start having things like financing programs for it. I'll give you what is happening in other African countries. They have their banks, they give perhaps if you want a solar panel in your house, you can go there, apply for it, and it will be taken directly at source from your employer, and they will give you a loan, which will be given to the installation company, and they can come fix the solar panels for you, and it'll be deducted at source. By the time you have financing regimes, a lot of people will be able to have alternative sources of energy. Remember, about 40% of the consumption goes to households. And if we can allow those households exactly to have other cheap alternative, CNG is coming in at about 300, 230 naira per liter. It would help people from an affordability and accessibility standpoint. But these are the things that the government can do to help the ordinary Nigerians. And of course, there's no gainsaying we need to start putting in, transportation options for people to be able to afford. By now, the money saved from subsidy should be used towards providing, let's say, something like a traveler's card given to people that are elderly or people that are students to provide either discounts or free travels on public buses for them. These are things we can do to ameliorate the situation and make life easier for the average Nigerian.
Very much. I was going to ask you the potential solutions and, where governments can come in their policies, to balance the interest of both parties. But you've just, highlighted that. And with that, this is where we would draw the curtains on the program. It's been interesting having to get your opinion and your view on this controversies. Thank you for joining me on the program, Dr. Wisdom.
Thank you.
All right. Do follow us on all our social media platforms at Global TV NG, and we're on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. I'm Queen Agaba, and I'm saying goodbye for now. See you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.